Yes, the chandeliers were so brilliant, each crystal a little sun casting rainbows on the floor. Everyone was there, all in their finest silks and smiles. It was a beautiful mask, you see, a beautiful mask for a family that had never really learned how to be kind, and I was the centerpiece of it all, the elderly matriarch in her best pearls. I could feel his eyes on me all afternoon. My grandson, his smile never reached his eyes. It was the same cold look had given me since he was a boy when he decided I was just a relic, an obstacle. It started with a toast. He raised his glass and told a story about his childhood, but he twisted it, made it about my strictness, my old-fashioned ways. He painted me as this cold, disapproving figure. And then he said it. He looked right at me, his voice clear and sharp over the champagne flutes. He said, "You know, I've always thought you were the most disgusting person alive." The air just went out of the room. A few people gasped. My heart felt like it had been plunged into ice water after all these years, to finally hear the quiet contempt said out loud and in front of everyone. But before I could even draw a breath, my daughter was there. She stepped between us and the look on. Her face was pure fire. She didn't shout. Her voice was low, but it carried to every corner of that quiet room. She looked her own son straight in the eye, and she said, "No, she's very rich." And for the first time his smugness vanished. It was replaced by pure, simple shock. Then that confusion twisted into something else, a calculation, a sudden desperate greed. The room began to murmur. I watched the news travel from face to face. I saw their expressions change from pity to curiosity to a new sharp respect, and in that moment I understood the fortune I'd silently built, the sacrifices no one saw. It wasn't just money, it was a weapon I never wanted to use. It was the truth made solid. Later my daughter took my hand. She didn't say anything, she just squeezed it, and I knew the real inheritance wasn't what was in the bank. It was standing right beside me, the one person who knew my value all along. Outline I, the matriarch's vindication title. He called me disgusting, but my daughter knew the truth. I was the family's fortune. Focus, a narrative from the grandmother's perspective, focusing on her hidden strength, the pain of family betrayal, and the ultimate vindication through her financial power and daughter's loyalty. I setting the glittering stage, a wedding, and old wounds. The scene is a wedding reception of extreme opulence with chandeliers, champagne, and designer clothes. The celebration is a thin veneer over decades of familial tension and quiet judgment directed at the narrator. She observes her grandson's cold demeanor from across the room, feeling the weight of his lifelong disrespect. Small, subtle acts of disdain from him throughout the event. A dismissive glance, a turned back build, a sense of inevitable confrontation to the public humiliation. A grandson's cruel words, the trigger, is a public moment, perhaps a toast or a shared story, where the grandson deliberately twists a family memory to highlight the narrator's perceived flaws. He uses this as a platform to launch his attack, making his private contempt public. His declaration, "You're the most disgusting person alive," is delivered with cold precision, meant to wound and humiliate the grandmother's. Initial reaction is a paralyzing mix of deep hurt, public shame, and a sad resignation that this moment was always coming. A pocket of stunned silence freezes the guests around them. 3. The daughter's intervention, a shocking defense. Immediately, the narrator's daughter steps forward, her body language radiating protective fury. She confronts her son directly, her voice firm and cutting, silencing the room further. Her defense is not emotional, but strategic. and factual. The pivotal line "Notia's very rich" is delivered not as a boast but as a cold, corrective statement that redefines the entire situation. The impact is visible on the grandson's face as his contempt shatters, replaced first by confusion, and then by a rapid visible calculation of W. Had he has just jeopardized for the aftermath the true inheritance revealed, the grandmother observes. The power dynamic shift instantly, whispers ripple through the crowd, and the glances she receives change from pity to a new wary respect. She has a profound realization that the wealth she accumulated 3 years of silent struggle is now her vindication, a form of justice, a quiet, wordless moment with her daughter afterwards solidifies their unbreakable bond and shared understanding of the family's true nature, the final thought cementing the theme that her true valuable legacy is the fierce loyalty of her daughter, not the monetary fortune. The whole day felt like walking on a knife. Saju could feel the tension just under the surface of all the smiles and the polite conversation. My son, the groom, was putting on a show, but his eyes were cold whenever they landed on my mother. And my mother, she was trying so hard to be happy for him, to be the proud grandmother, but I saw her flinch every time he made one of his little comments, the ones disguised as jokes. I felt like a pressure cooker just waiting to blow. I loved my son, but watching him disrespect the woman who raised me, it was becoming unbearable. Then he did it. He just said it right out loud for everyone to hear. He called her disgusting over some old harmless story she was telling. The air just went out of the room. I saw the light in my mother's eyes just die. It was like a switch flipped inside me. Any thought of being gentle, of smoothing it over, just vanished. This wasn't a moment for a quiet word later. This required a truth so big it would stop him cold. I stepped forward and I put a hand on his shoulder. My voice was calm, but it cut through the silence. I told him he had no idea what he was talking about. I told him that the woman he just humiliated was the reason he had this entire wedding, that the trust fund he was so proud of, the one he thought came from his father's side, it was hers, every penny. I told him about the business she built and sold, the fortune she quietly transferred to me, with the sole condition that it be used for his future. I watched the color drain from his face. I watched his smugness turn to pure naked shock. He wasn't a superior man putting an old woman in her place. He was a hypocrite biting the hand that had been feeding him his entire life. The silence that followed was louder than any music. People were staring. My son was just broken, but when I looked at my mother, she gave me the smallest nod. It was an understanding. This wasn't about cruelty. It was about drawing a line. It was about showing him that respect isn't something you can turn on and off when it's convenient, that real family isn't about what you can get, but about who you choose to honor. In that moment, the balance of power in our family shifted forever, and he learned that the quietest people in the room are often the ones holding all the cards. The whole day felt like a coronation. This was my world now. My success, my guests, my future. I built it all myself, through hard work and a modern mindset. I saw my grandmother across the terrace, her simple dress looking so out of place. I felt a familiar wash of embarrassment, a relic from a past I'd outgrown, a blemish on my perfect image. It started with nothing. A comment about the wine, I think something trivial, but it was the final straw. All that pent-up condescension, this feeling that she was holding me back just by being her old-fashioned self, it just boiled over. I wanted to put her in her place. I needed to. I leaned in, my voice low but sharp enough for others to hear, and I called her disgusting. I said she was clinging to a pathetic small life. I felt powerful saying it. I was certain my parents would secretly be relieved. I finally said what everyone was thinking. Then my mother stepped forward. Her face wasn't angry. It was calm, terrifyingly calm, and she just dismantled me. She said, "No, she's very rich, all of this. Your school, your startup, it was. Her money, every penny." The words didn't make sense at first. They bounced off the perfect image I had of myself. If I was so wrong about this, the very foundation of my world, what else was a lie? My judgment, my superiority, it was all just a house of cards. The laughter and music from the party suddenly felt like they were coming from another planet. I was completely alone in the middle of the crowd. That feeling of power curdled into a sickening panic in my stomach. My inheritance, my status, it was all built on the woman I had just publicly humiliated. My contempt for her, was it just a mask for my own deep-seated insecurity? The truly disgusting thing in that moment wasn't her, it was me. I had no idea how to even begin to fix something I had broken so completely. The wedding was a perfect stage, all that polished silver and forced laughter. It was a performance of family unity. But underneath you could feel the real hierarchies, the unspoken rules about who mattered and who didn't. And the grandson's words, they weren't just an insult, they were a dismissal, a complete devaluation of his grandmother based on her age, the assumption that she had nothing left to offer, that she was a burden, not a person. Then the daughter changed the entire game. She shifted the currency of the conflict. It was no longer about emotional wounds, it became about financial power. The moment she revealed that inheritance, the entire social dynamic in that room shattered and reformed in an instant. You could see the hypocrisy laid there. The grandson's shock wasn't about remorse, it was pure unadulterated greed cutting through his previous conviction. The family's sympathy evaporated, replaced by cold calculation of this new power structure. It makes you ask a difficult question. Is the grandmother suddenly more valuable now? Was she worth less before anyone knew about the money? The story exposes our deepest biases. It shows how quickly we let financial worth overshadow a person's inherent value. The real conflict here isn't just a family argument, it's a question about what we truly value in each other. Is it loyalty, respect? Or is it just the bottom line? The money didn't resolve the feud, it just revealed where everyone's priorities really lie. The air here is so clean, it smells of flowers and expensive perfume. I can hear the string quartet playing something soft and classical all around me. People are dressed in clothes that cost more than I used to make in a year. I'm sitting at this table with a linen cloth so white it hurts my eyes. My hands, they look rough against it. They tell a different story than this beautiful scene. My grandson just walked by. He gave me a smile, but it was the kind you give a stranger, a polite smile. It didn't reach his eyes. He was talking to one of his friends. Something about a trust fund. And in that moment I wasn't here in this grand tent. I was back in a small room with peeling wallpaper. The smell wasn't flowers, it was dampness and boiled cabbage. I was 18 years old. My daughter was just a baby sleeping in a drawer I used as a crib because I couldn't afford a real one. I remember counting coins on the kitchen table over and over, hoping I'd counted wrong. The fear was a physical thing, a cold stone in my stomach. I made a promise to her then, to that sleeping baby. I swore on my life that she would never know that fear, that she would never have to count pennies and come up short. So I took a second job cleaning offices after dark. Every extra dollar I did spend I hid it away. Then I learned about things, stocks, bonds, real estate. I taught myself from library books. I bought a tiny rundown house in a neighborhood nobody wanted. I fixed it up myself every night. After work I lived on beans and rice so that every single cent could go into something that would grow. It was a secret life, a silent project no one knew to the world. I was just a struggling single mother. And that was fine, that was the disguise. His words pulled me back to the present. He was standing right in front of me now, his voice loud. Grandmother, you just don't understand how the world works now. You're from a different time. He said it like my time was something to be pitied, something obsolete. And I felt it then, not anger, but something much deeper. It was the weight of all those years, the memory of Myra hands from scrubbing floors, the chill of that cold room. It rose up in me not as a weakness, but as a foundation, a rock. Then my daughter, his mother, stepped forward. She put her hand on my shoulder. Her voice was calm, but it had an iron strength in it. You will not speak to her that way, she said. And I looked at her, this woman I raised. I saw the understanding in her eyes. She knew the cost. She remembered the quiet sacrifices, the patched clothes, the nights I came home exhausted. She was the real result of all that work, not the money in the bank, but the character built in both of us. He fell silent. The crowd around us seemed to fade away. The revelation wasn't about the numbers in an account. It was about the history behind them, the struggle, the love that fueled it. And I understood, sitting there with my daughter's hand on my shoulder, that I hadn't just been building a fortune. I was building a legacy. The money is just paper. The real inheritance is her strength, her loyalty. That's the wealth that can't be measured. That's the shield I made, not for myself, but for her. And it held, of course. Here is the story from the supportive guest's point of view. I'd been looking forward to this wedding for weeks. The venue was stunning. Everyone was dressed to the nines. You could feel the joy in the air, a real celebration. But I've known this family for years, you see, and from the moment I arrived, I felt it, a little current of tension right at the main family table. You notice these things when you're on the outside looking in. The grandmother, Helen, she had that proud, fixed smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, and her daughter, Sarah, seemed a little too attentive, a little too careful around her, and the grandson, Ethan, he just looked annoyed. He was scrolling on his phone during the toasts. I saw a few of the aunts sharing a look about that. Then it happened. The music had just faded, and Ethan stood up. He wasn't smiling. His voice cut right through the pleasant chatter. He was talking directly to Helen, and it wasn't congratulatory. He was accusing her of something, of favoring Sarah's kids, of being unfair with her support. The entire table went silent. You could hear a pin drop. I saw Helen's face just crumple. It was heartbreaking. But then Sarah stood up. She placed a hand on her mother's shoulder, and she looked at her nephew with this fierce protective energy, and she said in this clear, calm voice that carried, "You have no idea what you're talking about." And she told him, she told everyone at the surrounding tables. She said, "The reason my mother hasn't been able to help you financially is because she already gave every single penny of her own savings to cover your father's gambling debt. She is not poor because she's frugal. She's poor because she bailed your family out." The gasp that went through the crowd was like a wave. I looked at Ethan. The color just drained from his face. He looked like he'd been struck. People at other tables were leaning in, whispering, "What did she say? What happened?" You could see the news spreading table by table, a ripple of shock through the whole reception the rest of the night. That's all anyone talked about. The band kept playing, but the mood had shifted. In the corner the aunts were huddled together, shaking their heads. Over by the bar a group of men were debating it. Everyone was reevaluating every interaction they'd ever had with that family. It was a stark reminder. You come to these events, you see the nice clothes and the big smiles, and you think you know a family, but you're really just seeing the surface. You never know what truths are hiding just underneath the champagne toasts and the pleasantries. The patient matriarch enduring disrespect with grace. You learn over the years to let a lot of things slide. You see the little slights, the subtle dismissals. You hear the tone in his voice when he talks to you like you're an afterthought. But you don't react, you just observe. You know that reacting to every little insult is a form of weakness. It gives the other person power over your emotions, so you stay quiet, you maintain your composure. You have a deep, unshakable knowledge of your own worth, and that isn't something a few careless words can diminish. Your strength is in your stillness, in your ability to wait to the unleashing of arrogance, the grandson's fatal error. And then he crosses a line. It's a public moment, a calculated remark designed to make you seem small. He thinks your silence is a sign that you're defeated, that you have no power to answer back. He mistakes your patience for passivity. He believes in that moment that he is untouchable, that his youth and his arrogance make him superior. But what he doesn't see is the trap he's setting for himself. Has so focused on landing a blow that he doesn't notice has stepping onto thin ice. 3. The instrument of karma, daughter's righteous fury. And then from the side a voice cuts through the tension. It's your daughter. She's been watching too. She's been storing up every slight, every moment of disrespect you've endured, and she's had enough. Her words aren't just anger, they're a correction, a realignment of the moral universe. She reveals the truth. He was too blind to see the inheritance, the security, the very foundation he took for granted. It was never his to claim, it was yours, and with a few sharp, precise sentences she takes it all away from him. His arrogance evaporates, replaced by a stunned, hollow silence. The humiliation is instant, and it's absolute for the victory of quiet strength. A lesson in dignity. You don't say a word, you don't need to. The justice has been served, but not by your hand. It came from the love and loyalty you cultivated over a lifetime. Your victory is in the quiet aftermath, and watching him realize the magnitude of his mistake. The power wasn't in shouting him down. It was in having raised a daughter who would stand up for you without you ever having to ask. That's the real lesson, that dignity and patience are a form of strength, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and letting the universe handle the rest. Was it right what she did in that restaurant? Let's get into it. The facts are straightforward. The grandson publicly humiliated his grandmother for being poor. He called her a charity case, and in response his mother-me daughter revealed a secret that she is in fact incredibly wealthy. She pulled the financial rug right out from under him. So the central question is, did she cross a line, or was it the only line she had left to draw first? The case for her actions, some would say the insult was unforgivable, that a cruelty targeting someone's perceived poverty is a deep personal attack, and that it demanded a response of equal power, not a scolding, but a shock. By revealing the truth about the money, she instantly shattered his entire worldview. In one moment she exposed the utter worthlessness of his shallow judgments. It was a defense of the grandmother restoring her dignity in the most dramatic way possible. And sometimes a lesson that harsh is the only kind that will ever stick. It was a proportional response to a nuclear insult, but then there's the case against the argument that she weaponized money, that by responding to an emotional attack with a financial one, she reduced a deeply human conflict to a simple transaction. She basically confirmed his worst instinct that money is the ultimate source of power and respect. Did she win that argument or just prove that her wallet was bigger? And what does that do to a family? It doesn't resolve the anger or the disrespect, it just buries it under a new power dynamic, one based on fear and control. It risks creating a relationship governed by greed, not love. She might have won the battle, but did she poison the well for any future peace? The truth is, there is no easy answer here. This is layered with so much history, so much unspoken hurt. It's a minefield of moral complexity. I want to know what you think. Was it a justified defense or a dangerous escalation? What would you have done in her shoes? Or if you were the grandson hearing that news, this isn't the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning. I really want to hear your perspective down in the comments.